What would you do if a stranger twice your age walked up to you and said, "Marry me, and I'll pay off every debt you have"? For Mark Davis, a young law student in Texas, that impossible choice became his reality. But what started as a desperate decision to save his family soon uncovered a dark secret, a hidden revenge, and a truth that would change his life forever. Mark Davis was only 23, yet life had already placed weights on his shoulders that most men twice his age could not carry. In Texas, where he studied law, the dream was supposed to be clear: graduate, pass the bar, and fight for justice. But Mark's reality was far from that dream. Every night, when he closed his eyes, he saw numbers, bills stacked high, tuition fees for his little sister, and hospital receipts for his mother whose health was fading. His late father had left behind not a legacy but a mountain of debt, and it fell squarely on Mark's back. There were nights when he stayed awake until dawn, staring at his textbooks but unable to read a single line, because all he could think about was how close he was to losing everything. His mother needed expensive treatment. His sister's education was hanging by a thread. And he, a law student who should have been preparing for a bright future, was drowning in despair. It was in this desperate season that Eleanor Brooks entered his life. Eleanor was 71, wealthy beyond measure, and well known in the community for her sharp business mind. She lived in a sprawling estate on the edge of town, surrounded by walls that seemed to keep the world away. Mark had only seen her from a distance before, a tall, stern woman who carried herself like royalty. He never imagined she would one day knock on his door. When she did, she came not with sympathy, but with a proposition. Her words were calm, deliberate, and unsettling. "Mr. Davis," she began, her eyes steady on him. "You need money. I need a husband. This arrangement would serve us both. You will have the financial security to care for your family. In return, you will stand beside me, not out of love, but out of agreement." At first, Mark thought he had misheard her. Marriage? To a woman nearly 50 years older than him? The idea seemed absurd, almost insulting. His first instinct was to reject her outright. But as her words echoed in his mind, something shifted. His mother's weak smile from the hospital bed flashed before his eyes. His sister's teary face when she begged him not to let her drop out of school haunted him. Desperation makes people consider the unthinkable. That evening, when he told his mother about Eleanor's proposal, he expected her to laugh or scold him. Instead, she reached for his hand, her voice trembling with both weakness and wisdom. "Mark," she whispered, "sometimes salvation comes in ways we don't expect. If this woman offers you a way out of this storm, maybe you should take it. Don't think about the shame or what people will say. Think about survival. Think about us." Those words cut deep. He realized then that love and pride could not pay hospital bills or tuition fees. And so, against his heart, but in favor of necessity, Mark agreed. The wedding was nothing like what he had once imagined as a boy. No music, no family celebration, no friends cheering him on. Just a small courthouse, Eleanor's lawyer, a notary, and the cold echo of vows spoken without warmth. When he slipped the ring onto Eleanor's finger, his chest tightened. Was this the day he saved his family? Or the day he sold his soul? Afterward, Eleanor offered him a polite smile, as though they had signed a contract instead of joined lives. "Welcome, Mr. Davis," she said simply, and that was the extent of their wedding joy. Moving into her estate felt like stepping into another world. The mansion was enormous, filled with chandeliers, marble floors, and halls that seemed endless. The garden stretched out like something from a storybook, trimmed and perfect. But to Mark, it all felt lifeless. It was like walking through a museum, grand but hollow. From the first night, he noticed the rules. Eleanor addressed him as Mr. Davis, never Mark. Meals were eaten at separate times. She treated him with respect, but never with affection. Their marriage was purely business, and she intended to keep it that way. The staff, however, behaved strangely around him. They whispered when he passed by, lowering their voices as though hiding secrets. Sometimes he caught fragments of sentences. "He doesn't know yet," or "She'll tell him when the time is right." At first, Mark brushed it off as gossip, but the unease grew inside him, heavier with each passing day. One evening, as they sat in the silent dining room, Eleanor looked at him across the table. "I hope you are comfortable here," she said, her tone polite but distant. Mark nodded, unsure what to say. "Good," she continued, sipping her wine. "In time, you will understand why this arrangement was necessary. Our families have unfinished business." The words struck him like a stone. Unfinished business? He wanted to ask what she meant, but her eyes were sharp, warning him not to press further. Still, his mind wouldn't let go of her hint. What kind of business could possibly exist between his struggling family and this wealthy, untouchable woman? Nights in the mansion grew longer. Though he had gained financial relief for his mother and sister, he felt trapped in a golden cage. The laughter of his youth was gone, replaced by suspicion and fear. Eleanor moved like a shadow through the house, always composed, always unreadable. And deep within Mark's heart, a storm was brewing. He had agreed to this marriage for survival, but he could feel that survival had come at a cost he did not yet fully understand. Something in Eleanor's words, in the whispers of the staff, in the cold halls of that estate. Something told him that the true story was only beginning. The longer Mark lived in Eleanor's mansion, the heavier the silence became. It wasn't just the absence of warmth or love. It was the presence of secrets. Every step he took echoed in the halls as though the house itself was hiding something from him. The staff looked at him with pity, sometimes even fear, as if they knew truths he had yet to uncover. Mark tried to focus on the positives. His mother was receiving treatment she could never have afforded before. His sister's tuition was paid in full. For the first time since his father's death, his family's future no longer felt like a sinking ship. But inside, Mark himself was sinking. He could not ignore Eleanor's words about unfinished business. What business could bind their families together? The answer came one stormy evening. While searching Eleanor's study for a textbook he had misplaced, Mark noticed a small, ornate key tucked inside the drawer of her desk. It was old, heavy, and clearly important. His curiosity took hold. After quietly exploring the hallways, he discovered a locked door at the end of the east wing. A door he had never seen open before. The key fit perfectly. The room inside was nothing like the rest of the house. Dust coated the furniture, and the air smelled of old paper and grief. On the walls hung photographs, faded, yellowed images of Eleanor with a man Mark had never met. In the center was a large portrait of him, smiling with pride. On the desk, beneath it lay stacks of legal documents and journals. Mark's eyes widened as he read the name, Harold Brooks, Eleanor's late husband. The more he read, the colder his blood ran. Harold Brooks had once been a wealthy businessman, but his downfall came through fraudulent deals made with none other than Mark's father. The documents detailed losses so catastrophic that Harold's company had collapsed. Soon after, Harold had suffered a heart attack and died. Mark's hands trembled as he opened Eleanor's diary. Each page was a confession, written in elegant handwriting, but fueled by pain and fury. She wrote of sleepless nights, of losing everything she and Harold had built, of watching him die broken. And she wrote of her plan. Her words were sharp, filled with venom. His son will pay for what his father stole. Not with money, but with his life bound to mine. He will know the weight of ruin. He will live trapped, as I have lived trapped. The truth hit Mark like a blow. This marriage had never been about companionship. It was revenge. Eleanor had sought him out, Not because she needed a husband, but because she wanted his father's bloodline to suffer just as she had suffered. As he dropped the diary back onto the desk, his heart pounded. He wanted to run, to scream, to tear down the lies that now suffocated him. But before he could leave, the door creaked open. Eleanor stood there. Her face was calm, but her eyes blazed. "I see you found it," she said softly. Mark swallowed hard. "You used me. This was never about help. You married me to punish me for something I didn't do." Eleanor stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Your father destroyed my life, Mark. He killed Harold with his greed. Do you think I could ever forgive that? I'm not my father." Mark's voice cracked with fury and desperation. "I've spent my whole life cleaning up his mistakes, and now you've trapped me in a cage of your own making." For the first time since he had met her, Eleanor's mask slipped. Anger, grief, and loneliness flooded her face. "I wanted you to feel the same helplessness I felt, to wake up every day knowing your life is not your own." Mark took a deep breath, steadying himself. "Then you've succeeded. But what have you gained? Revenge doesn't bring Harold back. It doesn't heal your pain. It just destroys more lives." Eleanor turned away, her shoulders trembling. But her silence gave Mark his answer. She knew he was right, yet she couldn't let go of her hatred. That night, Mark made a decision. If Eleanor thought she had trapped him forever, she was wrong. He was a law student, after all, and he knew the power of truth. Quietly, he reached out to his friend Peter from law school and hired a private investigator. Piece by piece, they uncovered Eleanor's recent dealings: illegal partnerships, falsified reports, fraudulent schemes. The evidence was undeniable. When Mark confronted her weeks later, he laid the papers on the dining table. "It's over, Eleanor. Not just for me, for you. I won't be your prisoner anymore." Eleanor's hands shook as she flipped through the files. For a brief moment, her icy composure shattered. Her eyes filled with tears, not just of anger but of exhaustion. "You remind me of him," she whispered. "Harold. He had that same fire in his eyes, that same stubbornness." But before the moment could soften, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Police officers entered with warrants in hand. Eleanor Brooks was arrested for fraud and conspiracy. As she was led away, she glanced back at Mark. For the first time, her gaze wasn't cold. It was weary, almost relieved. The months that followed were heavy. Mark testified at her trial, not with spite but with honesty. His testimony helped reduce her sentence. He showed mercy, even though she had shown him none. Eleanor, from prison, sent him a letter. In it, she confessed that revenge had been her true prison, chaining her tighter than any bars could. She thanked him, not for exposing her, but for choosing forgiveness when he had every reason to hate. With the estate sold, Mark paid off his family's debts and freed them from the shadow of his father's mistakes. But he didn't stop there. Using what remained, he created the Harold Brooks Scholarship Fund for Second Chances, a way to turn Eleanor's monument of pain into a legacy of hope. Returning to law school, Mark found a new purpose. He interned at a legal aid center, standing beside those who had been wronged by the system, just as he once had been wronged by circumstance. The story ended not with bitterness, but with healing. At the first scholarship ceremony, Mark stood before the crowd, holding Eleanor's final letter. He read her words aloud, her message of regret and redemption. And as he looked out at the young faces who would benefit from the scholarship, Mark realized the truth. The cycle of revenge had ended with him. He had chosen compassion over hate, and in doing so, he had given not just himself, but Eleanor too, a chance at peace. The boy who once thought he had sold his soul for survival had instead discovered something far greater: the power of forgiveness, the courage to rebuild, and the beauty of turning pain into purpose. Mark's story is a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles lead us to the deepest lessons about forgiveness, justice, and second chances. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs hope today.